Hi, everybody. So I'm recording this because I have been commissioned to write a short story. Only thing is, it's due in 23 days. So now it's a maximum of 4,000 words, and I do have a topic for the call for the anthology. And so I thought that I would walk you through the process of generating a short story from nothing to completed story in a very limited time frame. And it's helpful for me to record this for myself. And I think it's helpful for other people to see my process. I know that I always like seeing other people's processes. So this is step one of day one. I got the call a couple of days ago, but this is the first time I've actually had time to sit down and really focus on what I'm doing. So this is the same process I go through for novels and every other kind of story, but usually not in this period of time. And it is a lot more difficult to go through this for a whole novel. So 4,000 words maximum, which means it can be less than that. So I'm going to shoot for 3,000, 3,500, which is short for me for a short story. Often my short stories come in at the 6,000 range. I'm really comfortable at 10,000 words, but I'm glad to have the boundaries for my creativity for this. So the topic that I've been given is folklore or fantasy premise with an ocean setting. Yeah, an ocean setting. So, of course, this got me thinking immediately of Daughter of the Merciful Deep. Can I set it in the same world? Can this be um, like a prequel or not a sequel, but maybe a prequel that once it's out of the anthology, I could use um, in some way, as like a lead magnet or just be a companion to that. So, Daughter of the Merciful Deep is my story about a drowned towns, and there's a magical underwater world, ocean, the Orishas, my versions of the Orishas, which are West African spirits and water, river, ocean spirits I've been using. That makes the most sense, and that would be the lightest lift. Of course, I wrote Daughter of the Merciful Deep. Well, it came out in 2024, so I wrote it in 2022 and over 2023. So while I do remember it, I'm not as familiar as with other things. The other thing that immediately came to my mind was, could this be a connective thread between Daughter and the monsters we defy? But they're both standalones. They're both historical fiction that primarily takes place in our world. Of course, Daughter has a fantastical world that they go to, and they're thematic siblings, but they are technically on the page not. There is a little bit of a link, and extra points to anyone who points out what the link is that I embedded in Daughter that connects it to the monsters we defy a little bit. But the magic systems are actually different, and I think they could work in the same world. So could this be a bridge that really shines a light on that and makes it clear? I don't know. That feels like it's doing a lot of extra work that I might not have time for. So whenever I start something new, um, I have certain documents that I use. So I have a story seed workbook that I actually sell and it's available. And that's the first step in the process. And then I also have a story development workbook and a character development workbook, both of which are free and they're available on my site. And so the first step is usually to go through that, but I don't have a premise. I just have folklore or fantasy um, based in the ocean. So I have an ocean world. I've got the fantastical world of Daughter of the Merciful Deep, which is called New Elay, which is very specific. I don't have a character, I don't have a story, I don't have a plot. So often when this happens and when I get commissioned for a short story and I don't have any pre-existing ideas that have just been dying to come out, I go to my story engine deck, which is what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to show you the story engine deck and how I'm thinking about this. This is the story engine deck. This is what I use when I need inspiration. I need to figure out a story. I have no ideas or pre-existing ideas that I want to use, especially when I'm giving a topic or a call for an anthology, a theme, and I want to fit that to the theme. So what is the story engine? It comes with this guidebook, and here are the 5 different kinds of cards. So inside of the guidebook, there are different spreads that you can use. And you have simple prompts. It's one called the story seed prompt. There are character concepts, item or setting driven stories. So there are different kinds of spreads that you can pull from the different types of cards to give yourself an idea about the story that you want to write. So I'm just going to use the simplest one since this is only a 4,000 word short story. I'm going to use the simple story seed prompt. So let's get the cards on the table so we can get the box out of the way and I can show you what that looks like. Okay, so for the story seed prompt, we're going to just pick one of each color. So you have an agent, an engine, an anchor, conflict, and an aspect. First, you want to shuffle them. So we have an artist, a dancer, a writer, or a musician. So considering that I just wrote a novel about a dancer and writing about writers isn't really not that interesting to me. A lot of writers do write about writers. I find that I often don't want to write about writers. For now, let's choose an artist. So I'm going to set that card as the first one in the spread. All right, next we have our purple card, which are the engine cards, and wants to erase a memory of or with, or wants to restore a memory of or with. This is funny because of my thing about memory. I have already done erasing memories in Daughter of the Merciful Deep. So let us go with restoring. I don't have restoring as much. All right, so next we have our anchor card, which gives us a ruin, an artifact, a discovery, or a dump. A discovery, an artifact, or a ruin. Those are the ones that are most interesting to me. But considering that we're talking about an ocean story, I'm going to go with a ruin. I think that is sparking ideas. All right, next we have our conflict card, which is the red one. Our options are, but it will cost their self-respect, or but it will cost their reputation. Writing about costing self-respect, I mean, that's a certain kind of story. The one that like sticks out to me is cost their reputation. I just find that a little bit more interesting. The aspect cards are basically adjectives. They modify the other cards. So this aspect card, we have four options: fickle, hated, innovative, or mighty. Now, usually that would correspond to either the anchor card, which is the thing they want, or the actual character. So an innovative artist, what kind of artists aren't innovative, right? A mighty artist, a fickle artist, a hated artist. I don't know about this one. I'm going to set this one aside because I'm just not quite sure. I'm going to pick another one. It's a wonderful thing about this. You get to, if you're not feeling it, just pick another card and choose something else. So this one, a decoy, vindictive, influential, or arcane. Now, an arcane ruin, that could be interesting, but kind of, I guess all ruins are not arcane. A decoy ruin. What does that mean? All right, so let's go and read through the phone thing. An artist wants to restore a memory of or with a decoy ruin, but it will cost their reputation. Or an arcane ruin. I'm going to say restore the memory of an arcane ruin. Like arcane means people don't know about it. So if you're restoring the memory, that actually makes sense. Now, I don't really know too much about this artist. What kind of artist is it? So I could pick another aspect card, give me another adjective, or I could use the one I already picked. And maybe innovative doesn't work for me, but hated. A hated artist wants to restore a memory of or with an arcane ruin, but it will cost the reputation. Dun, dun, dun. That sounds like an interesting story. That's really like sparking something for me. So the next step for me to do is to write down the actual prompt. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm just going to use voice typing to do this. So a hated artist wants to restore a memory of an arcane ruin, but it will cost their reputation. And we just correct that to make sure it's right. So this is my prompt. And the other things that I know about the story are that I want it to be an ocean setting. So I'm thinking this ruin is going to be a ship, like a sunken ship, and fantasy or folklore. So I'm going to give it like a folklore vibe. Those are the parameters that I'm setting for myself for the story. The cards have been very helpful. Often I will take a picture of my cards and, just to keep them top of mind. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is get out my story seed workbook and work through that. Now, for a short story, I don't have to complete the entire workbook necessarily, but I've always find it really helpful to go through the main points and at least to start myself thinking through them. So let's go through that. Okay, so this is the story seed workbook. We have our intro and there's a little video for people, but since this is me, I know what I wrote. I know what I said in the video. So first of all, the story seed, what's the idea? I already wrote it down in this other document, and I'm just going to copy and paste that over here so that I have it in one place. So we have a hated artist wants to restore memory of an arcane ruin, but it will cost their reputation. Ocean setting, folklore vibe. That is the spark. That's the idea. That's all I've got right now. I still don't quite have any characters. I need to know more about this hated artist and the location of this ruin and this world, but that's the prompt. All right, moving on to the next page. The inspiration behind the idea. Here I could talk a little bit about why this is interesting to me. The inspiration is I was commissioned for this and I have to come up with something, but I love the idea of arcane things, like restoring a memory of an arcane ruin. What is that speaking to me? So I'm just going to write a few notes. Again, I'm going to use the voice note to write a few notes about what that is doing for me. The idea of an arcane ruin in the ocean is really intriguing to me, period. It brings to mind some of the themes that I touched on in Daughter of the Merciful Deep, period. I think there's definitely more to explore there, and I'm wondering if there's a way to work in a kind of Little Mermaid-esque story, question mark. Just clean up my voice typing, because it's not amazing. And yeah, this is just for me to come back to and say, what was I thinking about? What is intriguing to me about this? Yeah. I'll be noodling about this more and over the coming days, not too long. But okay, so moving on in the workbook. What excites you about this idea? What is important to you about it? And is this a situation or character or world or something else? So this is definitely a situation. What excites me about this idea? The restoration of memory is always really intriguing to me. So let me write a few lines about that. I am getting excited about the idea of restoring the memory of something as potentially culturally impactful as an arcane ruin, period. Why was it forgotten by the people? Question mark. What significance does this ruin have to the culture that the artist comes from? Question mark. And why would restoring it cost their reputation? Question mark. If they are already hated, maybe they believe that restoring this memory will actually restore their reputation. So this conflict comes maybe once they're already on this path and maybe it's a little too late for them to turn back, period. It could be interesting to explore the theme of doing something that has negative societal costs, but it being so important to you that you do it anyway, period. What kind of metaphor could that be in today's world? Question mark. So I guess I had more to say about that than I thought. Okay, that was really just off the top of my head. All right, we'll move on to the next page. The reasons here, it's just kind of like I really enjoy writing short stories, and I only really get the chance to do that when I get a commission, period. More so, the emerging topic and theme of the story feels like a good fit for my world and my work, period. Writing something tangentially related to Daughter of the Merciful Deep could be very cool, period. And I've always wanted to expand my standalone books in some way, period. I like to have the reasons, it's listed here in the workbook, but it is helpful for longer projects, especially when times get tough and you forget why you're doing this. Sometimes it's easy to forget why you're doing this. So eventually, this whole story seed workbook, the point is to get to this vision statement of your story. And I'm not sure if I can do that today or not, but knowing the deeper reasons for your storytelling, how it connects to your body of work over your career, yourself as an artist, the things that you care about, what you want to put into the world. I'm always a fan of that. So the next page is reflection, which is why is this your story to tell? I'm going to skip this right now because that's a little bit of a deeper topic. And for a short story, it's probably less important. All right, so this one is identifying your genre. Now, some of these are going to be less important for a short story that is part of an anthology. It's going to have its own vibe. It's not like I'm going to be marketing it myself, but I want to deal with, it's fantasy and folklore. Can I get some romance in here? Yeah. I just thought about romance. And I'm thinking, part of your world, Little Mermaid, gender swapped. Maybe I won't, I don't know, female hated artist. Because in my mind, this person was a male for now this whole time, which is weird because my main characters are generally female, but like hated artist trying to, costing their reputation. It has a very masculine energy to me. But what if it is a woman and in the process of restoring the memory of this arcane ruin, they encounter a merman? I don't know if I want to do the whole losing your voice Ursula thing in terms of Little Mermaid retelling. I do know that the original Little Mermaid is very bloody and gory, and I'm going to have to refamiliarize myself with that before I make any decisions about whether or not this is actually a Little Mermaid retelling in some way. But I definitely, want some romance in here because it's me and that's what I do. So I'm just gonna put yes in some way. We're doing romance. Are we doing Little Mermaid? That really depends on what the actual Little Mermaid was. And I do not remember the real one. I just know that it's very different. And I'm not sure if I want to go bloody. Know your reader. Okay, this is good for books. I'm not going to do this for this, but I do enjoy learning more about the demographics. Why will they enjoy the story? I think this is important. Why they will enjoy the story. All right. It'll be fun. It'll be cool. I'm gonna just type this. It will be cool and exciting. It will show a part of your world that you haven't seen before is what I wanted to say. It will show a little scene section of the world. That's not how you spell that. It's not exactly what I want to say, but that's close. How will they talk about it, recommend it to their friends, and the vision statement. I'm not quite ready for this yet, but this will be my next step. I'm going to stop here for the day and let these ideas sit in my mind a little longer. But eventually I do want to get to this vision statement, which will be the North Star for the project as I go forward. So maybe that'll be a tomorrow thing. I give myself at least a day to think about my hated artist who wants to restore the memory of this arcane ruin, but it will cost their reputation. And are they really hated? That's interesting. Something there's a tension there, but I think it's a good tension. It's like I don't know if I've written main characters who are actually hated. You know, Clara in Monsters is grumpy, Jane is beloved, Jasminda is hated in Song of Blood and Stone. That's a character who was hated by her community. So, okay, that's something I have done. I can kind of ground myself in that, maybe do a different take on that idea for this because I'm always trying to push. But, keep it simple, keep it short, 4,000 words. All right, so those were my opening steps in crafting the short story. I will be back with thoughts, contemplations, and to work on the story development workbook and the character development workbook next, as I use those to build the plot of what's actually happening in the story. Thanks for joining me on this journey. I'll see you in the next one.